fish rally friends, and welcome to my post Monte Carlo Rally kitchen table. Now, I know it's Friday and I know Monte Carlo Rally finished 4 or 5 days ago, but it's given me a little bit of time to sit and cogitate over what really we can take out, if you like, of the Monte Carlo Rally, the season opening Monte Carlo Rally. Well, there's one thing that absolutely smacks you in the face, isn't there? And that is the brilliance of Sébastien Ogier. It really was quite some performance from Ogier. He controlled it beautifully from start to finish. He was never, ever under any threat whatsoever. He was never stressed. He was completely in control. It was rally craft at its very, very finest. It really was. Yes, he's got a mountain of experience in Monte Carlo. Yes, he's now done, 4 rallies in a row in the championship. But we mustn't forget, Ogier is retired, effectively, making guest appearances here, there and everywhere. And we know now that his next appearance will be in Rally Mexico. When is that? Towards the middle of March, I think Rally Mexico is. So Ogier will come back and come back to a rally that he enjoys. And once again, probably have a decent starting position. He'll still be right up there with the 25 points he got from Monte Carlo. But he'll come back to Mexico and he will be almost certainly the driver to beat there. But Ogier's brilliance can't really be underestimated. What is that? That's 9 Monte Carlo wins for Ogier now. It's really quite some record. Tied on 8 with Sébastien Loeb at the start of the event. Did that put any pressure on him? Well, you wouldn't be able to tell, would you? Because he was so calm, he was so relaxed. There was a suggestion that maybe a touch of Ogier's former ruthlessness has gone. Well, yeah, I'd agree and I disagree with that. He still wants to win. He still wants to win above everything else. But he goes about it in a different way. The ruthlessness was at its peak when everything was conspiring against him. Remember, the FIA were changing the rules to stop him from winning in the Volkswagen days. And he felt hard done by. And we saw then, well, if they're going to have a go at me, I am going to use all my powers and everything I can do to have a go back at the opposition. And I'm going to prove everyone wrong. That was Ogier in his most ruthless form. And, he's always had a very, very likeable side to him. And sometimes, it's not been too obvious. But I think what we saw, particularly in the way that Ogier put his arm around Vincent Londes at the end of the event, the way that he pushed Londes forward and said, this is yours, this is your day, this is your moment, this is for you to enjoy, your first ever victory in the World Rally Championship. And that just happens to be the biggest rally in the world, the Monte Carlo Rally. The way that he embraced Londes and pushed him forward and showed him an awful lot of respect, I think, is a measure of just the man that Ogier is these days. He is truly the consummate professional when it comes to rallying. He's a statesman in rallying. There's no question about that. It was one of the things that when he retired from full-time rallying in Monza, 2 years ago now, I kind of thought we'd miss the most. Yes, we'll miss his driving. Yes, we'll miss his brilliance. Yes, we'll miss his competitive streak. But more than that, rallying, the rally community, in particular the driving community, will miss his statesmanship. He is statesmanlike in his ability to communicate with people, in his ability to be heard, in his ability to put points across that maybe others would shy away from. For me, that's what we'll miss. But we will enjoy these moments, won't we? Every time he comes back, every time he puts on that kind of performance. Saturday night, he lost 10 or so seconds to Kalle Rovanperä, and we thought, could it be game on Sunday? Nah, not a chance. Not a chance. The Monte Master knew exactly what he was doing. We'll enjoy it. We'll keep enjoying it. For me, it's a real object lesson for any youngsters coming through. So, clearly Rovanperä, World Rally Champion. You can say he's made it, but he's still got a lot to learn, Rovanperä. And that's frightening. That's frightening for all those, the likes of Neuville, the likes of Tanak, the likes of Elman Evans, who want to become world champions again. What's very, very frightening is that quite clearly Rovanperä has got, in terms of his experience gap, it's a whole lot bigger than the others. So he can improve a whole lot more than the others. But, they can learn from Ogier's craft. Ogier knew that final stage on Saturday night in the dark was perhaps the one where there was the greatest jeopardy. He was only ever going to be beaten in Monte Carlo by punctures. He wasn't going to be beaten by Evans, Rovanpera, by Tanak, by Neuville. He was only ever going to be beaten by punctures, and he knew that that stage was the one that held the greatest jeopardy in terms of puncture. So what did he do? Well, he took it a little easier. He gave himself a little more of a margin. He drove around the cuts that potentially held those jagged rocks that were going to rip his tyre wall, and he handed back that handful of seconds to Rovanpera. Wasn't concerned. He had plenty in hand. For me, that is rallycraft at its finest. Understanding from the start of the rally. And don't forget on Friday, big long day on Friday, struggling with boost from the hybrid unit, and he put in the performance. I almost said the performance of his life. It wasn't the performance of his life, but he absolutely threw everything at it through those opening stages on Friday morning, knowing that potentially he could lose a lot of time. In fact, he won all of those stages. With no hybrid, he won all of those stages and set himself up for a magnificent win. And it really was magnificent, and we can't understate it. We can't understate the magnificence of Ogier. Ogier, if he were doing the championship this year, would probably be Rovanpera's biggest threat. Shall we talk a little bit about Rovanpera? I thought he was also magnificent, by the way. He knew not to get into a scrap with Ogier. Rovanpera is finding his way in the Monte Carlo Rally, and his day will come. He will win the Monte Carlo Rally. He will win every rally throughout the course of his career, which may only be another 4 or 5 years. Who knows? I really do feel that Rovanpera is the type of talent who will go off and challenge himself somewhere else if domination becomes too much of an issue. But he's got time to win the Monte Carlo, and he will. And he will learn from every single stage, every kilometre, every day that he spends on the Monte Carlo Rally. And I thought he was great. I thought the second place was a great start to the year for him, effectively first off the full-time challengers. He took the power stage win, which was his extra points. That was an added bonus for him. And he never looked out of sorts. He never looked stressed. He never looked hassled. He never looked as if he was pushing and making mistakes. He looked very, very much in control. As did, you'd have to argue, Elfyn Evans. Evans didn't look as if he was really struggling too much. He had that unfortunate puncture on the Friday that dropped him back. But Evans looked good out there. And Evans, I think, had a lot to take away from the Monte Carlo Rally. Now, we move. We'll mention Katsuta-san in passing at some point. He had a decent rally, really decent rally. But we'll move to Hyundai. And for me, this is the interesting point. If you're on a roll, you've got to keep that roll going. Now, Mr. Abitabo said, the new team principal at the end of the rally, we have to be satisfied with one podium place. Well, yeah, right. If you compare it to last year's disaster, and it was a complete disaster last year, then a podium is a decent result. But how can it be a decent result? 1 third place and the other drivers lost. They really were lost. Esa-Pekka Lappi and in particular Dani Sordo miles behind. That's worrying for me to describe that as a satisfactory result, because here's the point. They have to win this year. They have to win something. What you have in Toyota is a remarkably strong lead driver in Kalle Rovanpera. In your second driver, you've got either Sébastien Ogier, not a bad one to have in reserve, or Elfyn Evans. That's a strong team. What do Hyundai have? They've got Thierry Neuville, who will battle. He's a battler, he's a fighter, he's a winner. He will battle every single rally. But their second driver needs to be able to compete with a Hyundai second driver. You have to be able to. If you want to win the manufacturers, your second driver has to regularly beat Toyota's second driver. I can't see that happening. I cannot see that happening with Esa-Pekka Lappi, with Dani Sordo. And right now, it's early in the season, okay? It is early in the season. I'm not writing them off. But what I'm saying is that Hyundai, in comparison to Toyota, don't look so strong. They really don't look so strong. And it's going to be a challenge. And to say one podium place, a third place, is a satisfactory result, we have to be satisfied with that. No, you don't. You really don't have to be satisfied with that. You should have had more of your drivers pushing at the front, in my view. In my view, you should have, if you realistically want a chance of winning the manufacturers this year. Listen, we've seen it before. When Mr. Adamo won the manufacturers title, crumbs, when was it? 2019? 2020? Can't remember. Way back. He openly admitted they didn't have the best car. They didn't have the fastest car. But they played the game the best. And this is where Hyundai are going to have to revert back to the Adamo way. And maybe we'll see a little bit of that. Craig Breen coming in, good starting position in Sweden. It gives him the opportunity to contribute. Breen has to come back and has to be quick and has to show us what he did with Hyundai in the past. He really does. He needs to be right up there, pushing for the podium places. And, ideally, pushing the guys at the front, pushing the likes of Evans, who we know will be quick, pushing the likes of Rovanperä, who will be ultra quick in Sweden. Breen has to be there supporting Neuville and Lappi. Lappi could be really, really quick in Sweden. We might all be surprised. I might be surprised. It depends, how quickly he's going to adapt to that car. But, I worry a little bit when I hear things like we're satisfied with one podium place. You've got to look at the bigger picture. The bigger picture is that your best driver, your best driver, your best option for a win in the drivers this year, the best option for wins all round was third, and a reasonably distant third at the end of the day. Your other two drivers were miles away. That, for me, is not a result that I would necessarily say is satisfactory. Certainly it's not. It's something to build on, not something to get too excited about. We'll have to wait and see. Sweden could be very different. But don't forget, for Sweden, we're seeing drivers, aren't we, doing events beforehand. We're seeing Lappi, we're seeing Katsuta-san, we're seeing, obviously, Ott Tanak doing events in advance of Sweden to just dial themselves in these new cars. That could make quite a big difference. Craig Breen, as far as I'm aware, isn't doing any event beforehand. He'll get plenty of testing. Don't forget that Hyundai's testing area is very close to Onenpoja. It's in the snow and ice, the winter wonderland of the Uvascular region at this time of year. So, they can test all they like there. And fingers crossed that Breen will get plenty of time because he needs to be competitive. Hyundai cannot allow Toyota to have the start they had last year. They had it all their own way for about 4 events, Toyota. And then Hyundai. They were like the galloping stallion coming up from the rear, weren't they? They really were. But they can't afford that this year. They cannot afford it. If they're realistic about winning the manufacturers and maybe Neuville winning the drivers, they cannot afford to let Toyota disappear off into the distance. Not with the strategy that Toyota can employ, bringing back, our 8 times World Rally champion. I'm giving him an extra title there. Sébastien Ogier. It'll be difficult. It'll be very, very, very difficult unless they can maximise the tactics as Adamo did so successfully over those 2 or 3 years that he was in charge there. It'll be very, very interesting indeed. Now, Ott Tanak, he's entered into Otapa, giving himself a chance. What did we expect from Ott Tanak? He's had an absolute nightmare of a run in Monte Carlo. He's not, I think it was 3 years since he'd finished the rally. He had a podium way back in 2018. Ott Tanak, decent start. Good points on the board. Second in the power stage, 10 points for his 5th place finish. Decent start, 14 points. It's what he needs, it's what we saw with, Ogier came into Ford and, he was winning events, but it took him time to get that car set up to his liking. The important thing for Tanak is over the next probably couple of rallies, so obviously Sweden, and then when we go to Mexico, that he continues to consistently score good points. Now, once we get into Europe, once we get towards Croatia, and Portugal, and Sardinia, that is when I fully expect the M Sport Puma to be absolutely to Tanak's liking, and Tanak will be a weapon in that car, that is for sure. But what Tanak can't afford is exactly the same as Hyundai can't afford. They cannot afford Hyundai or Tanak to be playing catch-up 3 or 4 rallies into the season. Yes, they can afford to be a little bit behind, but not too far behind. And I don't think Tanak will be that far behind. I think he'll be quick. He's been quick on the snow and ice the last few years. Is the Puma capable of giving him that kind of performance in Sweden? Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And with that warm-up event in Otapa, I think he could be one to watch in Sweden. But if it doesn't go his way, if they haven't quite got it right, it's not a disaster. As long as he's there or thereabouts, scoring those 14, 15 or so points in the event will keep Ott Tanak in the hunt and very, very much in the game for all our drivers. The important thing in Monte was to come away with points on the board. Tanak's come away too often with 0 points and instantly you're on the back foot. He's got good points on the board, as has Elfyn Evans, as has Kalle Rovanperä, as has obviously Thierry Neuville. It is shaping up to be a very interesting year indeed, that's for sure. In terms of our drivers, manufacturers, my money is absolutely 100% on Toyota. The strongest lineup, the strongest car. In terms of development, you'd have to say probably the best resource team. They are a team, they are harmonious, they are working together, they are working towards one objective. For me, Toyota are the team to beat in the manufacturers. I also think that Kalle Rovanperä is the driver to beat, but I do think that Neuville has a chance. I do think that Elvin Evans has a chance, and I very much think that Tanak has a chance this year, but they need things to work for them. Everything has to be aligned, absolutely, perfectly aligned for Toyota's opponents to beat them this year. They need luck on their side. Neuville had a little bit of that, didn't he? When we were in Monte Carlo on that final day where he went way too hot into the hairpin, he pulled the handbrake and the car slid backwards, missing a solid wall by inches. He slid in through the driveway and off he went again. It was like something out of a Bond movie. It was really quite remarkable to watch. But that is the kind of luck that the opposition will need this year if they're going to go on and beat, I think, the almost unbeatable Kalle Rovanperä. There we go. Listen, news this morning, by the way, folks. Craig Breen, who we talked about coming back in Sweden, he's going to be doing the Portuguese Championship. That's interesting, isn't it? In a Rally 2 Hyundai. Seat time is what it's all about. Breen is going back to where he felt he was comfortable. He achieved his best results doing championships around Europe, European Championship, the Italian Championship, the Portuguese Championship, 5 or 6 rounds in the WRC, and I think that might, let's wait and see, but he might get more than that this year. We'll have to see. But seat time is the most important thing for Breen, and that is why he's doing the Portuguese Championship. Being competitive, being quick, being prepared, all really, really important when you're doing a part-time championship in the WRC. So we'll see how that benefits Breen, but I think it really will benefit him this year. So folks, don't forget, you're watching this on YouTube, if you're watching it on Facebook, there are things that I like you to do. I like you to leave a little comment. Let me know what your thoughts are on my thoughts from the kitchen table. Leave a comment, leave a like. If you haven't already, on YouTube particularly, subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the little bell button. That gives you an alert every time that we get a new video coming up on our YouTube channel. So again, oh, by the way, what is that? People are asking what that is behind me. It is not a green screen. That is the back of my kitchen. That is a milk churn. Makes butter, or it used to in the olden days, if you were wondering. Folks, thank you very much once again for joining me at the kitchen table.